And every Thursday, we talk about matters to do with money, matters to do with businesses, matters to do with the economy, and things like that. And probably you're wondering, what does corruption have to do with business and with money and with things like that?
Yeah.
Now, that is what we want to get into to find out how corruption affects our economy. Because I came across some data that was saying that we lose quite an amount of money.
Yes.
That is, that is supposed to go into our economy to corruption.
Yes.
Apparently, approximately close, actually more than $500 million. 600 plus
billion.
And that affects the country's GDP. So we want to find out, is it possible? And Frank began with a question, and you were asking, is it a dream?
Should we wake up?
Is it possible?
Yeah.
Are we there?
Are we there already?
Are we headed there? Yeah. And who else is best fitted to help us with that conversation than the chairman of the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, Dr. David Oginde, already in studio, and we are live on our Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, that is X. So please share this link with as many people as you possibly can as we get into the conversation. Good morning, Bishop.
Good morning.
Good to have you.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
Amazing, and thank you for heeding to our call.
Thank you.
So straight into the matter of the day. But just before we get to the matter of the day, please tell us a little about EACC. Sometimes I feel like we get confused with your mandate, so that we are expecting maybe too much or too little from you.
Or things that don't belong to us.
Yes, so that we lump them on you and we are blaming the EACC. So just a little about it.
Our mandate is actually outlined in the Constitution and in the law. The Ethics and Anti-Corruption Act outlines what our mandate is. It is actually in 4 areas. The first one is to investigate and recommend for prosecution any persons that are involved in any kind of fraud within the public sector. So I need to emphasize the public sector, because if, say, Frank defrauds you of 100,000 shillings, you can't bring it to EACC.
Oh,
okay.
Now we know.
Now you fight your battles out. So some people come to us with private disputes. We are not involved in private disputes. So if somebody takes your land or defrauds you of your money or things like that, that belongs to DCI.
All right.
That belongs to the police.
Okay.
So that's where you go.
Okay.
But if either of you is a government official and the transaction involved government resources, then that belongs to us.
All right.
Okay. So you come to us, we say, oh, Frank, who works with this department in government, took my money and did not give me the services that were supposed to be delivered. Then we'll look into it and find out what actually happened. So that's our first. The second one is to institute proceedings in court to recover any properties that belong to government that somebody may have acquired. So illegally acquired assets.
All right.
We would go to court and either freeze, confiscate, get back and restore to the public. So if somebody has taken public land, properties of any kind, even money, we have the mandate to go after that person and get those resources back and restore them to the public. And we do that quite a bit. The other one is to monitor the any public entity for any corrupt practices.
Okay.
So if we detect that an area, or we suspect that an entity, a government entity, may be involved in some unbecoming conduct, we can go and investigate. And if we find that indeed there's something, we can take necessary action. Sometimes we don't have to wait for things to happen. We can issue an advisory where we suspect that something could happen if nothing is done about it. So you sometimes hear us issuing advisory. For example, not too long ago when the floods were expected with the El Nino, and there was a fund that was set up to mitigate against that. Now we issued an advisory in advance to say these resources have been set aside for mitigating the El Nino floods. And we are warning people that are involved not to misuse those resources. Yeah, and then we monitor how the resources are utilized. The other one is to advise any person or any matters and the functions of government of whatever nature that would involve or result in loss of resources or abuse of office and so on. Then we have the whole issue of ethics, where we monitor the conduct of public officials and enforce the relevant laws so that officers behave and conduct themselves in an ethical manner in whichever way place they find themselves. And then education, we are involved in public awareness, educating the public on the dangers of corruption and what they can do to mitigate those kinds of problems that we face. We actually educate through school, through formal systems, and any other method that can help create a nation that is of integrity. So those are that's our mandate.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Now we know.
Now you know.
Yes.
So anything that falls in those areas, you can expect that we will do what we can.
All right.
Yes.
Okay. And Frank said something in the previous hour, and someone was actually alluding to the fact that it is true, even as we begin the conversation on corruption. Is it really a statement of truth? Is witchcraft a form of corruption?
It really depends. If somebody uses witchcraft to threaten you and to get something from you, then it is corruption. If, say, a government officer were to tell you that if you don't do this and that, this is going to happen to you, and therefore you, because of that fear, you release your resources. Any form, anything that is used to acquire or cause a person to do an unethical thing is corruption. Whether it is witchcraft, fear, threat, whatever kind, yes, it is. But like I said, if it is just a person has gone to a witch doctor to help them do whatever they want to do, that is between them.
All right.
Yes.
Okay, so we are scoring around 34.4 on the index, on the corruption index. Perceptions. How are we doing? Frank asked earlier on, again, I keep alluding to, or rather getting back to what he said.
Yes.
Is it a dream? Are we getting there? Are we there yet? Corruption-free Kenya.
I don't know which index you are referring to.
Am I ahead?
Because the Transparency International Perception Index, a report that was given issued just recently.
Yes.
Kenya scored 31.
31.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
31%. So I don't know the 34.
Okay. Maybe this probably is a previous one.
That may be because the previous was 32.
Okay.
The previous year.
All right.
Then we dropped 1 point to 31.
All right.
Points out of 100. So what does that mean? The TI corruption perception index is a global survey that is done across the world, involving about 150 countries. And they look at two things. You are scored, the country is scored on the perception of how open and transparent is business conducted in the particular country.
Okay.
The prevalence of corruption. So you are scored up to 100 points, where 0 is the worst, and 100
is the best.
Is the best.
All right.
Okay.
Yes. So that is where Kenya scored
31
in 2023. Then you are also measured against, you are ranked against other countries. So the ranking now is the opposite.
Yes.
The lower the ranking, the better you are.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, but obviously you're either number 1, number 2, number 3.
Yes.
They are going upwards.
Yes.
So if you are number 1, then it means you are the best country in the world as far as fighting corruption is concerned, or doing business transparently is concerned. If you are ranked number 150 or 180, then of course you're
doing badly.
you're not doing very well.
Okay.
All right.
So last year I think we were number 120. I forget, should be 123 or thereabout. Yes. So that means we were not doing too well as far as that ranking is concerned. But one of the things that needs to be pointed out in those rankings is that they are perceptions. That's why it is called a perception index.
Right.
It is how people perceive corruption. It is not an actual measure of the levels of corruption in a nation. It is how people perceive the levels of corruption within a nation.
So it could be good or worse.
Yes, it could be better or worse.
Okay.
But that's what people perceive.
All right.
But perceptions, as has been said, the impact of perception is just like reality. If I perceive you to be corrupt,
Yes.
I will not do business with you.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it is, you can't tell me I'm not corrupt. No,
Yes.
I think you're corrupt.
It's not enough to defend myself.
Yes, it doesn't matter. If you come to me and you want to borrow money from me, and I have no confidence that you can pay, just a perception. I look at you and I say, do you have the capacity to pay?
Yes.
And what I decide is my perception. So I look at you and I say, 50,000 lent to Frank.
Yeah.
That's money gone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Forget.
So forget it. So I then can decide whether to give it to you just as a loss, or I decide I can't give you.
Yes.
It's based on perception. It is not reality. You may be a very honest person.
Yeah.
You will return it on time. But I perceive you not to be honest, and therefore it affects our relationship.
So perception may vary with different people.
Yes, it may vary with different people. So, but now when it comes to these perceptions, what we need to know as Kenyans is that it affects businesses. It affects how we do international business.
Right.
It affects how much people invest in a country. So that if there are people who want to invest in a country and they perceive the country, or rather the country is perceived as very corrupt or not very corrupt,
Yes.
that may make their decisions. They can decide, hey, we are not going to invest in that country.
Yes.
Because from this index is showing that, these people are very corrupt, or they decide we want to put our money here because it looks like it's a good place to do business. So therefore, though it is a purely perception, it is important that we as a nation work towards being perceived to be a corruption-free country. But more importantly, that we are not just perceived, but we actually are, which I believe is the topic of our discussion today.
Yes, sure.
Right.
Because that will give us a lot of confidence international confidence, people who want to come and do business with us. When you present yourself as a Kenyan, wherever you present yourself, you'll be taken seriously, you know, because you come from a country where people are trusted.
Yes.
Right.
If you, well, looking at you, I don't think you are there. When I was going to, what I was going to say. There were days, and I lived in those days, a bit in those days myself.
Yes.
When Kenya was a very trusted country. Almost every country in the world, you could go without a visa.
Yes.
Yeah, you didn't need, as a Kenyan, you didn't need a visa. Just get your ticket and jump into a plane, and
You're there.
and you go, you come back.
Right.
That's what trust does, because people believed that a Kenyan is a trusted person. If they say they are going to do business in London and then come back,
yes,
that's what they are going to do. They are not going to do other things. They are not going to overstay their time there. So I remember going to several countries of Europe as a student at the University of Nairobi.
Yes.
At the time, I didn't need a visa. I just get a ticket and off we go. I went to Germany, to Netherlands, to UK and other places. No visa.
Trust was enough.
Trust was enough. That's what trust does. Now, a Kenyan. I can see you are laughing because you know.
Yeah, because before you take off, investigation begins.
You have to bring your mother's what? You have to deposit, show them that you own property, you have a secure job, you have what, you know, bring your bank account. All those things. Why? Because you're not trusted. We are not trusted.
And Bishop, I'm wondering.
Yes.
Because you have lived through both times or both generations.
Yes.
Where did we lose it? What happened?
What happened is that we started misbehaving.
Okay.
Yes, we started misbehaving. We started abusing the trust that we have, first internally and also externally. So you found that Kenyans, for example, if you're talking about visas, they would say, I'm going for a conference.
Yes.
And then they never come back.
The conference never ends.
The conference never ends. I'm going for studies.
Yes.
Then they never come back.
Right.
You know? I'm going to visit my relatives. Then they never come back.
Wow.
So these nations realize that Kenyans can no longer be trusted. So that is what brought us down. But then even internally, we started misbehaving in terms of the trustworthiness of public officials. It used to be that if you are a public official, you are purely there to serve the nation, to serve the people. This idea that a public office is a place where you enrich yourself is a very recent thing. Yeah. Public officials were very respected people. If you said, I work for government, people really respected you.
Yeah.
I remember growing up and people worked with post office, people worked with railways, people worked with these parastatals. I mean, they were so respected, you know, men and women of integrity. And when they were retiring or leaving their jobs, they were celebrated. But now it got to that place where it all turned around that a government office is a place for you to enrich yourself. So the very first task that seems like a Kenyan does when they get into a public office is to find out, what can I get for the time that I'm here? And so the whole issue of corruption came in. And that is what has got us to where we are today. There was no anti-corruption commission. There was no need for it.
Yes.
Anti-corruption commission is a very recent thing. Very recent thing. So we have messed up ourselves. You know, if you have children, think of it. If you have children in your house, the default mode is that as members of the family, you respect each other, you respect each other's property, you respect whatever it is in the house.
Yes.
And so there is no need for umbwakali for the family.
Yes.
There's no need for locking up things.
Right.
But suppose there's a child who keeps going, taking some of the things, going to sell out there to get money, buy drugs or whatever.
Yes.
They go to the fridge. They take food that was meant to be eaten for tomorrow.
They eat
Then
today.
they eat today. You know? So what happens? If this continues, of course, first you talk with them, you say, you should not do this, you should not do that, and the other. But if it persists, what happens? People begin to lock their rooms.
Lock and key.
You know?
Yeah.
The fridge door is locked. The kitchen door is locked. That is where we have found ourselves as a nation. Because the children of this nation have got to that place where we don't respect that this food is meant for the whole family. I cannot go in the middle of the night and serve it myself. By the time people wake up, the fridge is empty.
Yeah.
You know? So it's actually a very serious matter.
Yeah.
So now EACC is put there like a watchdog in the kitchen
Right.
to ensure that
No one takes the
supervise the resources.
yes, supervise. If you hear some footsteps, you say, where? Go back to sleep.
Oh my.
That is a situation that has got us where we are.
Yeah.
Now, if you take that, again, using that analogy, if you are in this family, therefore, where some of the children are abusing their responsibility, stealing from the fridge, stealing from mama's handbag, you know, and things like that.
Yeah.
If that word goes and your neighbors get to learn that this is how your children are, do you think they will allow them into their compound?
They will never.
They will never allow
They
them in their
can't.
compound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where the visa comes in, you know?
Yeah.
Because our neighbors don't want to let us into their countries
Yes.
because we are misbehaving.
Yes.
So it makes us as a nation, puts us in a very bad situation. So if we can reverse that, and I believe we can, and that's what we are working towards,
Yes.
we can then enjoy, first of all, the freedom of just living as a people, one with another.
Right.
But we'll also enjoy the freedom of associating with our neighbors and the international community.
Yes.
That's what trustworthiness does to a nation.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Right.
And talking about doing business with other countries, I mentioned earlier that and you would tell us if you have the right statistics about the amount that we lose in terms of the GDP. So what can we do then in order for us to bounce back and to realize this corruption-free Kenya?
Estimates that have been given by global organizations are that we are losing about 1/3 of our national budget.
Wow.
So if we're talking about a 3.6 trillion budget like we had in the current financial year, it means that 1.2 trillion
Is lost.
goes to private pockets illegally.
Yes.
That is not small money. If you consider that our budget deficit for the year was about 700 or so billion.
Yeah.
So it means that if we were to deal with corruption, even reduce it by 50%, that would still give us about 600 billion, would release 600 billion to be available to do what we need to do. If we were to deal totally with corruption, that all the money budgeted for goes to what it is intended to be used for, it means that 1.2 trillion would be available. We would have no budget deficit. That's what it means. And we will be living a much better life. The issues that we are talking about in terms of economy, bad economy, high taxation, all those things would be a thing of the past, because we would have adequate resources.
Yes.
Because what the implication of that is that our actual expenditure as a nation that we should be budgeting for is about 2.4 trillion. That's what it means.
Yes.
But it is bloated by another 1.2 trillion, which is then stolen. So that 2.4 then is what we use for our country. So if we had the total 3.6, we would be in surplus.
I see.
Right.
Yeah.
You see?
Yes.
We would not be needing all these levies. We would not be needing extra taxation. And more than that, we would be having our projects done and delivered on time and on at cost. This nation would be very, very, very far, because we have a lot of resources. We are very well resourced in almost everywhere. And Kenyans generally are hardworking, you know, given the right environment. Kenyans are hardworking. Things like unemployment, school fees, name it, everything would actually be totally different. That's what it means to have a corruption-free Kenya. Now, unfortunately, as a nation, and now I'm talking for all of us as Kenyans, we have not linked that reality with corruption. So that Kenyans we have come to that place where we think corruption is a way of life.
Yeah.
And it is the only way of life.
Bishop, I had a very bad joke.
Please.
Where someone said
Yes.
that maybe we should then just institutionalize corruption, so that you're given a receipt for whatever you pay. Ukienda pale mbele ukiitishwa,
Bongo you.
unasema, I've already done it. It's a bad joke.
It's a bad joke. But what it would simply mean is that you pay more for the services, which is already. So, say for example, what example can I give? You want a passport.
Yes.
Say for example, you want a passport. So I forget how much the passport is now. Say let's
4,500.
4,500. Okay. So how much bribery do you need to give to the issuing officer for you to get your passport on time? Say another 1,500.
Yes.
So the passport then becomes
6,000.
6,000.
Yeah.
So it works out to the same.
Right.
The cost is still high.
Yes.
So we are still back to the same. And that is almost the reality, that people are paying higher
than they should
for services.
Yeah.
One of the we have just issued our report for the last quarter, and one of the cases that we are forwarding for prosecution is a school head teacher, you know, who is levying parents for costs that are not supposed to be levied.
Yes.
You know, all kinds of little costs, which amounts to about over 10,000 for a public rural school. So it means that the fees is inflated by that 10,000 shillings. And many times you find that children are staying at home because the parent cannot raise that 10,000 shillings.
Yes.
You know, per term. So that child is missing school because of an illegal levy. The future of that child is being destroyed because of an illegal levy that is levied by a head teacher who has decided to go beyond what is expected. And that money does not end up in school in most cases. It ends up in the pockets of either the head teacher or the teachers, or sometimes even the board of the school. So if you think of 10,000 shillings times, say, 400 students.
Yes.
What are you talking about?
Wow.
Per term is about 4 million
Yeah.
per term that they are taking home from these poor children. So you find that when parents are crying out and saying the cost of fees of school is too high, yet at a primary school level, there is no fees that is supposed to be paid. Same for secondary school. So these children's lives are being ruined. So if you legalized or formalized, there are many, because now that 10,000 will be official and it will be levied across all the schools, because which headmaster will not want to also get that 10,000, you know? So it means that many more children will will not be able to go to school. So it is not a solution.
It's not.
No.
All right.
It's not a solution.
We want to hear what the solution is in the remaining few minutes that we have. But before we get to the solution, we'll take a very quick business break. Then we'll be back in a few moments. We're receiving your comments on 20933 0717 400 555, which is our WhatsApp line. And we'll be getting to them in just a few moments. Stay with us.
Listen and live on 93.3 FM in Nairobi, 93.9 Western Kenya, and 101.9 Mombasa.
The Business Line. It's just business. Agriculture Cabinet Secretary Mithika Linturi has directed the Agriculture Food Authority to investigate allegations of massive cane theft amidst rising concern over weighbridge fraud. This even as the CSR revealed that his ministry was in the process of developing tough regulations for the management of weighbridge to ensure
on Corporate Hub this wonderful morning on Activate, and I believe wherever you are, you can find us well. 0717 400 555 is our call in WhatsApp line, 20933 on SMS. You can as well reach us on our digital platforms at Top FM Live. We are live on YouTube, X, and Facebook. So before we have a look at the solutions and the interventions we need to make as a country to see us to have this corruption-free country. Chair, you could please help us know. It's said that integrity in Kenya is very expensive. Maybe there are people in the chain of command, and maybe you are the junior. Is integrity really expensive?
I would say yes and no, depending on what the person means or which perspective you are taking.
Yes,
it is expensive if you are living in a corrupt environment where people are committed to corrupt practices. Then if you stand out as a man or woman of integrity, it can be expensive.
Right.
Let me use a biblical illustration.
Right.
In Hope FM. Daniel, we are told in Daniel chapter 6 that he was a man of integrity. He was an excellent worker. He was free from corruption. There was no corrupt practice found in him.
Yes.
But exactly because of that, where you would think that people would commend him for being such an upright person,
Yes.
a great civil servant, he was working for government, they ganged up because they themselves wanted to be corrupt.
Yes.
They wanted to take shortcuts.
Yeah.
And this person now is like standing on their way or causing them to feel bad. So they organized that he would be removed, and not just removed, be killed. So they went to the king and asked the king to issue a decree, and Daniel found himself in the den of lions.
Yes.
Why? Because of integrity.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So integrity can be expensive, not just now, but even then.
Yes.
So thousands of years
I see.
ago.
Yeah.
Right.
So generally, men and women who love darkness will not tolerate light.
All right.
So that is where it becomes expensive.
Yeah.
So that if you are going to stand out as a man or woman of integrity, there will be people who will not be happy with you. And there are men and women who have suffered like Daniel,
Yes.
who have lost their jobs. Some have lost their lives because they stood up for integrity. But it is just expensive in that sense. But in the long run, it is actually a positive.
Okay.
Because like we have said, if we are losing about 1/3 of our budget into corruption, it means that integrity would save us that money.
Yeah.
So it would actually lead to a cheaper life.
Yeah.
It is a more affordable life.
Yeah.
So then integrity then is not expensive.
Right.
I see.
Yeah,
I see.
integrity is a good thing.
I see.
So if you and I, like we were saying, in the days of trust, you just like when I lived in Buruburu, just when it had been put up,
Yes.
it was actually illegal to put a fence around your house.
Wow.
Yes, people who attempted to put a fence around their houses, I think it was national housing, they would come and demolish.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay.
So the houses was open. You are free to move to your neighbor's house and so on. That's how we used to live here. If you go to some most Western countries, as far as I know, I can't think of any country where I've gone and people have fences around their houses.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because of trust.
Yeah.
You go up where they deliver mail at your door.
Yeah.
You have ordered a parcel, say like the way we do here from Jumia or other people, and they come and put it at your door, and then they go.
leave it there.
They leave it there.
It cannot disappear.
It will not disappear. It will not disappear.
Yeah.
So it makes life so much easier, so much cheaper when people live in trust and respect for one another.
Right.
So integrity is actually very cost effective. It's not expensive.
All
Right.
Yeah.
In that case, then it's part of the solution. Living in integrity.
Yes.
It is not part.
It is the solution. Okay.
Yeah, it's that solution.
Uh-huh.
It's. I wish Kenyans that we would actually realize that and just say no to corruption.
Yes.
Right.
Just say no to corruption as a nation. All of us just say no to corruption. If somebody asks you for a bribe, refuse. Don't give it. If you are working in a government office, don't ask to be bribed for the work that you're supposed to do.
Yes.
If somebody gives you, don't take it.
Yeah.
Just refuse to take it. And if we create that culture where I come to a government office, I get the services I need for the cost that is right, this country would be an amazing country. But it requires a mind shift. It requires a change of heart. It requires for us to know that actually this is the way to go. And countries have been able to transform. Many Asian countries were worse than we are. But they changed. They changed and the economies took off.
Yeah.
Right.
And now we are importing things from them. They are industrialized countries that
Yes.
are now producing amazing things for the world.
Yeah.
So we too can get to that place where we refuse, reject, stand up against
Yes.
corruption. If we do that, this country can change. And we as EACC, this is a campaign that we are on, and we want to intensify to educate Kenyans that corruption is expensive, not integrity.
Yeah.
Right.
It is corruption that is
Expensive.
expensive.
Right.
It adds much more cost to your life. The road is more expensive than it should. The services are more expensive than they should. The school fees is more expensive than it should. You go to hospital, there are no drugs because somebody took the money for the drugs
Right.
and pocketed it.
Yeah.
So if we stood up as a people and just said no to corruption, this country would just change. These issues of economy is bad, uchumi ni mbaya, unga ni nini,
Yes.
it would be a thing of the
Of the
past.
past.
It would be a thing of the past. You know that if you plant tomatoes
Yes.
and you take it to the market, you'd get value for your
For
money.
your money.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
You get value for your money. Nostalgia,
Yes.
the good old
You
days.
remember?
Yes.
When I was growing up in our place, among the cash crops was cotton,
Yeah.
coffee, sisal. Those were cash crops,
Yes.
and they were called crops,
Yeah.
and they were real
Cash crops.
Cash crops.
They were real cash crops.
Mhm.
You could leave your water in the sphere boiling, take cotton, go to the cotton sale point. They wait, they give you cash. You
Go
pass
buy
by
unga.
It was the same with coffee. It was the
Yes.
same with sisal.
Yeah.
And so it was actual cash crop. You rarely were people planting like maize and so on, this subsistence farming.
Yeah.
It was not there. During the cotton season, you would look as far as your eyes could see, it was all white.
Yeah.
It was real cash crop. But then it came now, they started, you go, you take, come tomorrow.
Brokers.
We'll pay tomorrow.
We'll pay tomorrow.
Mhm.
Then it is 1 week. Then it
Tomorrow
is 1
never
month.
comes.
Then
Yes.
it is 1 year.
Mhm.
And then people just gave up.
They cut down the crops.
They cut down the crops. I haven't seen cotton for a
Very long while.
very long, since I was in primary school.
Wow.
I mean,
Wow.
it's a long time.
I see.
So our lives would be so much better if we dealt with this thing called corruption. And it requires a concerted effort as Kenyans. It is not going to be done by EACC.
Yeah.
We can facilitate
Right.
the process,
Yes.
but it requires every one of us as Kenyans to say no to corruption. If a police officer stops you for whatever reason and they are asking you to pay something, just say no. And like we said, in that sense, it may be expensive. You may be told you have to go to the police station.
Yes.
Go,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and let's frustrate this whole thing
Yes.
until they realize that, hey, Kenyans are not paying.
Yeah.
We are not biting. So if we do that,
Yes.
we can transform this country. And I can tell you, we'll be among the developed countries of the world.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Bishop. Allow me to quickly read some of the comments that we have here. Good morning. It's good that you're having this discussion, a corruption-free Kenya, because yesterday we had the same discussion with my friend, and we were wondering if corruption is ever going, a corruption-free Kenya is ever going to be realized. A case in point, a traffic police officer usually use public transport means, and each time we are stopped on Mombasa Road, the conductor lights hands over something, and I think you've just mentioned, because she was asking, what's your insight on this? He was Waso from Utawala. You've just answered that a few moments ago.
Yeah.
Is corruption thievery?
Yeah.
Thievery.
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 Yeah.
Okay. Corrupt persons are employed to be watchdogs. of government or parastatals and are paid a salary, yet they scheme to steal billions. It's quite a lengthy one. I'm wondering where we're going this one. What hurts is that the officers, some even CEOs, are paid hefty salaries, yet they steal because of greed, unlike a petty thief who steals to buy food, yet is jailed. I'm not sure if it was a comment or a question, because I haven't quite. It sounds like a comment rather. So, Bishop, I have been in long distance transport sector for some time now. When I entered this sector, I was introduced to giving money anyhow, but I refused completely, and nothing happened. All the time I stayed on the road.
Oh,
wow!
Man,
it's good.
It is
Beautiful.
Possible.
Yeah,
it is possible.
Suppose we had 1,000 of such. Suppose we had 10,000 of such.
Wow. Thank you, Elijah. Bishop, our time is gone. Give us the last comment in closing.
I think I've already made my appeal to Kenyans.
Right.
Just like the person you have just talked about, finally, who has decided they are not going to give the police officers anything.
Yes.
And they're saying they have been there for years and nothing has happened.
Nothing has happened.
So it is possible, because Kenyans, we have come to believe that unless you give something, your things cannot move.
Yes.
And that's what perpetuates corruption.
I see.
Right.
Yeah.
So my call to Kenyans again, which I've said, let us just stand up and say no to corruption. In your corner, say no to corruption. In whichever sector you are, whether you are within the public service, just refuse to participate. And then be a whistleblower. If you see things happening, say something about it. You know, the other thing that Kenyans do that perpetuates corruption is that, I just want to live my life.
My life. As long as it depends on me. Thank
so
you,
you see things happening and you say, hey, I just want to live my life. Is stuck in my name.
Bishop, thank you. Our time is gone. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you for helping us through this conversation.
Thank you.
Bishop Dr. David Oginde, the EACC chair, helping us understand that it is actually possible to realize a corruption-free Kenya, and it begins with you and I.
Yeah.
Yes, let's make it work. It can work. Amen. And as we wrap it up, we